While little remembered today, for its time in the late 23rd and early 24th century, the Centaur class was a revolutionary and very powerful design which set the tone for a generation of Starfleet frigate-class vessels. Sadly, the ship today, when it is remembered, is thought of as merely one of many classes of the Excelsior generation, when the reality could not be farther from the truth. The Centaur was a capable design which measured in at some 381 meters long, was 320 meters wide, and 78 meters tall. The ship was armed with an impressive number of phasers, initially of the type 4S model, and a powerful fore and aft torpedo armament, which made the ships a major departure for what was traditional in a frigate at the time, and brought the class more in line with the capabilities of a light cruiser at the time of their introduction. The Centaur had a crew of some 200 when new, with later refits adding to and lowering that number at various points over the decades of their service. The class also having differing warp speeds depending on exactly which variant and year a given ship commissioned, and also its refit status. Before the Centaur can be mentioned, it is necessary to recap the lengthy development of the Excelsior class, from which the Centaur derived a large number of features. Excelsior began development in the late 2260s as early theories about transwarp propulsion began to become better fleshed out. Several prototype hulls were then developed to test warp field geometry before a final form was settled on, and construction of the lead ship and prototype began in 2271. It then being intended that the prototype vessel, named Excelsior in 2273, would be ready to begin her trials in either 2274 or 75. But this would not be the case, and it would in fact take a further decade of failed experiments, accidents, near disasters, and major redesigns for the Excelsior to finally succeed in breaking the transwarp barrier, which was done successfully only in 2287. This serious delay would also have major implications for the makeup of Starfleet in the 2270s and 80s, essentially leading to the development of the Constitution II class, much increased production of the Miranda class than was initially intended, and the later Constellation class of cruiser, which was built as a backup in the event that the Excelsior became a complete failure, as looked likely. What this also meant was that production of the stablemate classes which would complement the Excelsior in service would be much delayed, with multiple designs using Excelsior components and technologies having to be scrapped, and new ones prepared as various aspects of Excelsior proved to be unworkable. Thus, when Excelsior finally passed her trials and entered full service with Starfleet in 2286, Starfleet engineers would begin a rush to design and get into service stablemates for the new large cruiser that was the Excelsior class. Entering service throughout the very late 2280s and 2290s, a new generation of ship classes would enter service with Starfleet, these being the Hakuola, Merced, Centaur, Kepler, and Pike classes, which ranged from heavy cruiser to destroyer-sized escorts. Among this group, the Centaur would be slated to perform the role of frigate, a traditional and often underappreciated classification which historically performed essentially cruiser functions of escort, patrol, and scouting within Federation space, being overall a smaller and less well-armed cruiser which worked in less dangerous areas to free up the proper cruisers for work in more important areas. The Centaur was a slight departure from this norm in frigate terms by being the first such production class to mount torpedo launchers, it being felt previously that given their less combat-focused roles, including torpedo launchers would just take up space in an already cramped hull form. But, given the increasing tensions in the galaxy at the time, with the arms race with the Klingon Empire in full swing, and relations with other neighboring powers being less than cordial, it was felt that should war break out, torpedoes would give the ships much-needed extra bite, and help boost Starfleet's overall firepower significantly. The Centaur would pass her trials in 2292, entering service the next year and being quickly followed by roughly 40 sisters. The initial production run of over 100 ships being cut back after a 2295 fleet review, which found further production of the Miranda class would be a better use of resources, the Miranda having been just re-rated as a frigate in Starfleet's order of battle as a result of this review. The Centaur was felt to be a significantly superior ship to the Miranda. However, the lower production and maintenance requirements of the older design were felt to be a better use of Starfleet's limited resources. Despite their reduced numbers from initially intended, making them something of a scarce sight on the frontier, the Centaur would nonetheless be found to be a capable and well-liked design which proved itself to be very sturdy and well-built. Centaurs thus gave generally unremarkable but vital service for most of their lives, being found to be well suited to serving as flagships of frigate squadrons, often made up of various marks of Miranda-class ships. This is not to say their service was entirely peaceful, as Centaurs found themselves committed to fight in the few conflicts which Starfleet would become involved in during the period, engaging Romulan forces during the Tomed incident, the Sheliak at varying points, Orion pirates as a constant threat, and towards the end of their service life being used extensively during the border wars with the Cardassian Union. The class, though, was slated for replacement in the 2260s, alongside many other older designs, and most of the surviving ships would be placed in surplus depots in the early years of the decade. However, this would not be the end of the Centaur class, as the continuing escalation of tensions with the Cardassians, re-emergence of the Romulan Star Empire on the galactic stage, general chaos in the Klingon Empire, and first contact with the Borg Collective would all be combined to see at least a few ships remain in service. But it would be the initial tensions and later conflict with the Dominion which would become the Centaur's swan song, the entire class being reactivated and refitted before the war, and later fighting hard during the conflict, members of the class being present in most battles of the war despite their limited numbers. Taking nearly 50% losses, the survivors would be finally decommissioned and scrapped shortly after the end of the war as wartime construction of ships such as the Steamrunner, Sabre, and Norway classes meant that their service was no longer needed. The final vessel to be decommissioned, the USS Manticore under the command of Captain H. Harrington, would be selected to join the ranks of the Starfleet Museum in a brief ceremony in 2284, showing just how highly Starfleet rated their service, even if they generally flew under the radar while performing their duties during the majority of their service lives. While not the most remembered design, the Centaur was nonetheless a well-designed, sturdy, and long-serving class which provided decades of good service with Starfleet in their near century of use, despite their small numbers. And that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to give it a like, comment, subscribe if you want more videos like this in future. If anybody guesses would it be a cameo or an Easter egg or a joke? I don't know. Anyway, there's something in the sort of tail end of this video that's a tie-in to a whole other series other than Trek, and if you can find it, let me know in a comment and I will give you a brownie point. What is a brownie point, you may ask? Well, it's a unit of value roughly equivalent to 10 Shroot bucks. There's another callback for you. Or not callback, but reference. Reference, that's what that is, a reference. There's another reference in there and you can get a brownie which equates to a Shroot buck. You know, if you can. If you want me to stop these sort of unhinged ramblings, I have a Patreon down below that you can join and tell me to stop these unhinged ramblings. I won't listen to you if you tell me in a comment on this video because you're not paying me and therefore you can't tell me what to do. But if you are paying me, then you probably can tell me what to do, and enough people join the Patreon, and enough people say, hey, quit with these inane ramblings at the end of the videos, I might listen. Might.